We're live. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Happy post-Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday, and I hope you celebrated the day and the time off, if you had the time off, or time with family, or time honoring yourself. I hope that you chose an authentic path towards celebrating the holiday, um, and really nourished, because that's what I think about with all the good food. It's like, let the bounty of nourishment begin. Hopefully that you feel very nourished, and welcome to a new week, a new episode of When It's Enough. I'm Sarah Alley.
Jasenia.
And here we talk about self-love, relationships, owning your truth,
And spiritual growth.
and we really put the emphasis on spiritual growth. So we're going to dive into a conversation around vulnerability today. And our hope is to talk about vulnerability, one, in a vulnerable way, a very real way, and two, to hopefully talk about it and explore it in a way that's different than what you have heard. We're not here to simplify vulnerability. We're not here to make it tell you how to be more vulnerable. Our intention is to explore the magic of vulnerability and what's also can be challenging and difficult about it. But when we really allow ourselves to reside and to be and embody vulnerability, what really can open up for us, for you in your life, where you are, and sort of the magic sauce that it creates in life when we can allow ourselves to walk with an openness and vulnerability. So I'm so glad you're here, and yeah, so let's dive in.
Yes. So, what's vulnerability to you?
Yes,
Right?
let's put it in the comments.
Yeah. How do you define it? How do you practice it? How do you feel it?
What's your relationship with vulnerability?
Yes.
Yes.
What is it? And the one person I love to hear talk about vulnerability is Brené Brown.
Right.
She's my teacher when it comes to that. I really didn't see being vulnerable the way I see it now, thanks to her, because she describes it and explains it in such a loving way, in such a compassionate way, in such an empathetic way, of what being vulnerable really does to our lives. And I know she says that being vulnerable is the act of courage, is being courageous when we're vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to talk a lot about what areas in our lives does it help.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It helps to live, how we live, how we love, how we parent, and how we lead. If you're a leader, if you're on your own business, if you're, how you interact with others,
how you lead your own life.
Yes, how you lead your own life as well. Also, so it impacts every aspect of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very beautiful way of being humans.
Yeah.
It actually really helps us being more human.
It's all about humanity.
Humanity, exactly.
When I think about how I would define vulnerability, because it is one, courage.
Yes.
It's about open-hearted truth.
Yeah.
To me, vulnerability is about being honest,
Mm-hmm.
being real. It's about your truth that is authentic to you, and how you reside in that truth with an open heart, because vulnerability is about openness. And I put in the description of our talk today where I mentioned exposure. That, that word exposure, it feels like even when I say it in my body, like what it feels like is a little jarring, right? Because it's about being so seen. And I recognize like how much, for me in my early beginnings, how much of my like the conditions of my childhood made me feel like I should not be seen and heard, right? And I've learned how to open to vulnerability, but I will tell you at the beginning, I would have thought that vulnerability was like this sort of feel good process, right? Like it's about like being kind and good and compassionate and pleasing, right? And being seen well, right? And that's not at all what vulnerability is about. It's not about feeling good. It's about feeling free. And there's a very thin line between being seen as good and what feels good and actually what it is to be free. Freedom does feel good. But your freedom, right, may feel very risky or conflicting to other people. And vulnerability is the process of really choosing to not abandon yourself. And what I'm learning is the more that you stop abandoning yourself, the more you actually truly find belonging, real genuine belonging. And that's what Brene Brown is so good about talking about belonging. It's kind of like a warrior's energy to be vulnerable, and yet we don't talk about it that way because it is the path of freedom. Personal freedom, when you actually have an actualized personal freedom, is when you actually create a world. We get closer to a world where freedom can really exist. And that's why vulnerability is like, it's magic. It's magic sauce.
Yeah. And is it easy to get there?
It's a risky one.
It's a risky one. It's because it really takes for you to open up in ways that you never were able to.
Yeah.
Because you weren't taught that. You were taught to bottle up your emotions. You were taught to not be, like she said, not being seen, not being heard, all this stuff, So it's not easy, but it really takes us to that freedom, to that freedom for the love of ourselves, to love ourselves. So if we talk about steps of how to be vulnerable, I would love if you guys can share how do you practice it, right? How do you be vulnerable?
Yeah.
And I think that our beautiful life, show us to be vulnerable in moments of when you're not being your authentic self, is to really recognize that you were at fault at whatever happened at that moment, and being vulnerable enough to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I did this to you.
Yeah.
I wasn't in my right self, or I have so much in my head and I took it on you, or I was being this way. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can we be that vulnerable to say I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Or can we be that vulnerable to also ask,
or to look wrong?
Yeah. To also, talk to the person and say, like, her and I, we have that vulnerability. We are able to talk to each other.
Anyway.
So when something, I take it as, okay, did she mean it this way, or did she meant it to make me feel like crap?
Right.
I don't think so, because she's no. Instead of me making stories, let me be vulnerable enough and call her and be like, this is how I took you the message, and am I creating stories? Can you help me find, the right answer to what I'm talking or saying to myself?
Yeah.
Right? Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
And it's scary to be like, because we live in a world that is constantly projecting perfection, right? And if you're not perfect, you're failing, right? So there's this perfection, fail, split, which I've learned a lot of over the past year. And so because it's this idea of like trying to show up perfectly or being right, which is all about being seen as good or whatever, we avoid being vulnerable. We avoid like saying like, shoot, I think I got this wrong, or admitting that like, where I'm at or where I was, like I'm, like to allow ourselves to be seen as weak is actually the moment when we really step into our strength, And so it's like while it's hard, that's why it's the most courageous thing you can do.
Yeah. Let's seek excellence instead of seeking perfection. Instead of being perfect at everything. Oh my God, I used to be that person.
Authenticity.
So bad. Yeah, authenticity.
Yeah.
That is the one. Showing up in your authentic self, I think, is the most beautiful way of being, because you're opening up to not only saying I'm sorry, but to also, put the boundaries that you want for that person in your life, right? So it's both ways. It's being vulnerable in both ways, not just like, okay, yes, I'm sorry. No, that's not being vulnerable. That's not really creating or honoring yourself at all.
Are you sorry? Maybe you're not sorry.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not about pleasing the other. It's about not abandoning yourself.
Yeah, I was hearing Renee. She had a talk, and I don't know who said this, but she said this quote, which I like, and it said, "When you shut down vulnerability, you shut down opportunity." And when I heard that, I'm like, oh my God, that is so true. Like,
and what's the opportunity? I find it to be love.
Yes.
Love.
It is. It is, because it really takes you to that space and to that place of love. Obviously, she also teaches us to be vulnerable with the right person, because creating is very important for that person to create that space for you. And I know that a lot of us, or most of us, can feel, right? When we're able to be vulnerable, when we're able to be open, when we're able to share, when we are able to say, without the shame, without the guilt, without that, pointing fingers, without all those feelings that can trigger those emotions when that space it doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. So our heart, is the best way to feel it all. I mean, we can feel it.
Yeah.
When it's, the other person feels the same way, or is giving us that green light to go and say.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a line to tread between being vulnerable and being an emotional dumper.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've heard people like, I'm just being vulnerable, but really they're just sharing a lot of information that is really difficult for the other person. There's not a boundary of a container that is inclusive to the other person in the experience, right? It's just, I'm projecting all my stuff, right? And it's not actually inclusive. Like vulnerability is inclusive. It says, I am sharing a part of myself here and asking you to commune with me in this space, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like something to think about when it comes to vulnerability, that there's an intention behind vulnerability.
Yes.
And when you have intention, right, that means you don't just go share whatever you want to any person.
No.
You actually have an intention of like, who is this person to me? what is the nature of our relationship to one another? Is this person a safe space for me to share this with, right?
Right.
Or am I like emotionally dumping or testing another person to see if they can meet me in this space? That has a lot of manipulation and like trauma bonding around
Yeah,
it, you
because
know?
that's the core. It's a trauma.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say like the way we start with vulnerability, right? Like if you want to know like, okay, how can I tap into vulnerability? It's to sit with, like you were talking about, Jacinia, is like the pain we carry. It's like sitting with
Yeah.
your shame, your wounds, getting really close up on them. Like I just had a conversation this morning with my mentor who, had told me, what were we talking about? It was like the feeling of like if there's a feeling or an emotion that's coming up that's like this doesn't feel good, instead of like bulldozing it or masking it or like distracting yourself with something else, so that you don't have to feel it, which is like what we totally do. And we can be completely unconscious to the fact that we're doing that because we think that we're helping ourselves by doing something else. But really what we're doing is stifling and repressing like what actually needs our attention.
Yeah.
And it's calling for our attention. It's like you want to start with understanding vulnerability as to first allow yourself to sit with your own shame, your own wounds, your own deep disappointments, because my God, like that is where we build walls. Like I'm really understanding is like it starts with disappointment. It's like heartbreak, disappointment, resentment, like all of these complex, difficult emotions that come from a series of losses over our lives.
Experiences, yeah.
Right? And to sit with them, and to actually put your arms around it, to show compassion to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were saying about dumping, it's like when we're in a relationship, right? You tell your boyfriend or you tell your girlfriend, there's something I would like to share with you, and this is my vulnerable moment. I would like to tell you that this made me feel insecure, and so I'm gonna share this with you. So how can we work through this so I won't have that feeling or that action trigger me, or maybe I took that action in the wrong way. How can we come into an agreement where we both can create a safe space for this feeling for me, right?
Yeah.
And then that person that loves you is gonna hear you out and do everything and anything to make you feel safe, secure, understand it. A person that's there for you.
That really cares about you.
That cares about you.
And here's the reality: is like if the person doesn't, this is why being with your wounds and your shame and your like when you have yourself, when you are caring for yourself, like that's the foundation. Because sometimes you can't share yourself with people and they don't. They are not there.
So yeah, what I wanted to share also about that is like you're sharing that with that person that that cares about you and that you care about that person, and it's why you're being vulnerable and open to share how you're feeling at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like 10 minutes or 15 minutes after, you're not gonna go to him or to her and be like, I'm feeling that feeling again. Can you help me with it? Because that's, like she said, that's dumping. That is not sharing, because we have to be responsible for our emotions also, because that if it's something is triggering us, it also has to come from our traumas, from we were babies, how we were raised, or our relationship we had before, and we're projecting that into the new. So it has a lot to do, but it's also when you talk to that person and he's creating he's creating that safe space, there is, you now have to do the work in you. because you know
Right.
you can trust that person,
Right.
because that person created that space for you to be like, no babe, I love you, we're good, I'm sorry if I made you feel that way, but this is what I meant
Right.
by that action.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, vulnerability is like it's like the healing process of being able to let go.
Mhm.
So if you know, here's what I would say is that like if something continues to come up, that means that, like you're saying, like you haven't done the work to heal at the root what the issue is, because it's not about the other person. And what I learned more and more, it's like one of the, you know, it's like the foundational, one of his core principles to being human in this field called life is that it is never about the other person and always about mirroring to you where you are within yourself, right? And relationships come, and they're there, you know, for us to show up as authentically as we can, which means being in your truth and allowing yourself the space to be held and supported, right?
Yeah, relationships to me is one of the most, I'm talking about romantic relationships, it's one of the most, you know, vulnerable space for me. Is where I'm being super open, is where I'm like really, you know, showing myself, giving my everything without knowing if that relationship is gonna work,
Right.
you know, without knowing what's gonna happen after. So that's really it's really risky. It's a really vulnerable moment for me, but I also have to come to the agreement with myself is that it's okay to give my all, but at the same time, I know I have me, because I love me. And at the end, if that relationship didn't work, guess what? I'll be fine, because I love me, and the best love for myself is me, myself.
Yeah.
So when you know you love yourself that much, you're not afraid of giving love, because you are love. Right. So it's really vulnerable. It's just doing what you don't know what the outcome is gonna be of whatever you go you know on in life. You know, so yeah.
And vulnerability is a process of building intimacy with yourself. You know, it requires intimacy, and that's one of the things we don't talk about. You know, intimacy is not just about romance, right? It's about vulnerability and how you create openness for yourself and with others. And so when we build intimacy with ourselves, and the ways that we do that, you know, the way you start building intimacy with yourself is, again, like running towards your own pain, running towards your own wounds, and how you can actually love and show yourself the deepest amount of compassion, right? How you give yourself grace, how you build better self-talk, how you honor the vessel and the expression of who you are in this life, right? That's the way that you start to build intimacy with yourself. And when you have a deep intimacy with yourself, you walk with an openness. That vulnerability is almost like, it's like second nature to who you are, and you recognize that it's kind of like your own superpower, right? And the world needs more vulnerable superheroes than they do like take charge, dominant, fix it types. It's like, you know, we wonder why, like, there's so many things, like the chaos and the turmoil, the dysfunction, the, you know, these like not like nonsensical, you know, killings and shootings, and these lines that keep being drawn, right, that create all this separation. All of it is because of armoring up, of masking, of control, of dominance. And the one simple solution and answer to it is vulnerability. And you cannot do that in the world with other people if you can't do it to for yourself. If you can't build intimacy with your own self, if you can't sit with your own suffering and nourish yourself without making yourself feel badly, how on earth are you going to do anything else out in the world?
Yes. Yes, it's being that, having that relationship with yourself, like she said, intimacy. And because intimacy is really seeing everything about yourself, it's everything. And it's really comes to the point where you really see, well, where
Hi,
where
Ikra.
where am I your where do I need to be more authentic to myself,
Yes.
so I can have more empathy for others, where I can have more compassion for others, because when we're being that person for us,
Mhm.
to us, this world will be a loving space for all of us.
Yes.
And you know what? That change starts with us.
Yeah.
Because it's just right. I mean, I don't like watching the news because I get so depressed, and I'm such an empathetic person. I feel it all to 200%, if that's even accurate. I feel it all, and it really hurts me. Like, to see all that is like, my God, if we can only see ourselves and see where we are lacking, see us, instead of pointing the fingers, instead of seeing the flaws of others, instead of seeing how others are treating others, or how that person is acting, or how that person is not acting, how the person is doing or not doing, or who they chose to love or not love. Instead of pointing fingers and just let them be free and be themselves, look at yourself,
and your own
look in your heart, look at you, see it with yourself for 30 minutes and be, how was I today towards others? How did I treat somebody today? With love and compassion?
How did you treat yourself with love and compassion?
How? Because it starts here.
Yeah.
It starts here.
Yes.
So, to me, being that loving person, it's beautiful, because we give it to others without expecting anything from them. And it's okay.
Ikra, I hear you. You have to work on this thing called vulnerability, right? You've been taught to be tough. Mm-hmm. We've all been taught. Like, we've all been conditioned.
Yes. Oh my God.
Even if you grew up in a wonderful household with very loving parents, you still live in the world. Mm-hmm. And the world is constantly communicating to us messages on, like, how we have to, like, armor up, get strong, be independent, don't show any, all of that. And it conditions us.
Don't be
weak. Don't be weak. Don't be seen as weak, right? And so we wonder why, if we're taught, like, don't be seen as weak, we wonder why people then get, like, gun happy, right? Or violent, right? Because they can't show any weakness, which means they've got to armor up, which means they've got to
suppress.
They've got to meet the moment, which means they've got to dominate. They've got to, right? And all of that is just, like, it's all fear. It's all wounds.
It is.
And that's why that's why we are the answer, right? Like, you doing this work that feels really hard is literally the answer to everything.
Yes.
It's the most revolutionary act you can do.
And that's one of the most beautiful presents you can give to yourself.
Yeah.
That's going to be, I'm challenging you to do that for your New Year's resolution.
Yes.
To be vulnerable.
Walk in more vulnerability.
Yeah.
Put those walls down.
Yeah. And also, slow down and be present.
Yes.
Let's slow down and be present. Be present to who's around us. Be present to how we are at the moment. Let's be present of, how we're talking, of how we are showing our authentic self.
Yeah.
Be present.
Yes.
In every moment of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When it comes to, like, vulnerability, because it is so much about love and belonging, and it's the reason why, what I'm coming to uncover is this thing around rejection, when we feel rejected, or the times in our lives where we've internalized the feeling of being rejected or abandoned, right? That begins to create and build the walls that stop us from being vulnerable. And I've been exploring for myself, right, getting really curious about this feeling of rejection and this story around abandonment. And, we talk about spiritual growth, right? And in my own process of awakening, and I don't know where you are on your path as you're listening to this right now, but if you understand or have a feeling or a sense of oneness, right, and how we are all interconnected, and if you understand the mirror, right, of who we are to one another, and what I find every person in this world to be, and it's a conscious, like, effort, right, to remember this for myself, especially in the hardest moments, is that we are each the opportunity to one another to deepen into love. We're the opportunity for love. That in the face of what's really hard and painful, how can I be more loving? And that's not about being loving to the other person necessarily. No. It's how can I shore up love here? How do I ensure that I myself feel loved, right? That might be I deny that, walk away.
Exactly.
I close that door, I close that chapter. I make a different choice to stop abandoning myself, right? And that the other person's rejection or abandonment of me is really not about me.
No.
It's about them. Right?
They're rejecting and abandoning themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when you are really in the face of love, that's why we talk so much about self-love. When you have it shored here and you're open, like, people see you for who you are. Yes. They wouldn't want to reject that. No. They wouldn't want to abandon that. No. They would want to dive into that, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you know that you're being open and vulnerable and loving, and you are shoring it up here, and the person in front of you is not able to meet you in that space, let them go.
Yeah.
Own yourself.
Yes.
Own your truth.
Yes.
Like, do what you need to do to remain embodied in your love. Yeah. And that is what vulnerability calls us to do, right? Sometimes we have to share a truth, or we have to speak to the ouch, right? That might be the way where we have to honor, like, ourselves as love. I know that I have something I need to say that's hard and difficult. It was great because I was having a conversation this morning with my mentor about hard conversations, right? And it's like, that is the way we practice vulnerability, and it's how we build intimacy with ourselves. And the more we can allow ourselves to be in our truth, the more we really are connected with one another.
Yes.
And we create space where people can be real.
Yes. Yes.
What is a world where people are walking around whole and real? My God.
We wouldn't be here. It's all heaven.
Let me just shake out my wings right here. Like, come on. Yeah, is it possible?
Yeah. And it can be possible, but it's really, it's really facing the fear.
Yeah.
It's really facing the shame. It's really facing the rejection.
Yes.
It's really facing all these emotions that is hard to overcome, the pride, the controlling, that that ego self that, my God, it always wants to show up, because we want to be better than, and we walk with this so space perfect. Like, I'm perfect. Yeah, right. No, nothing bothers me. I'm good. What are you talking? No, I'm not sad. What are you talking about? I'm good.
Yeah, good.
I'm good.
I'm unbothered.
I'm unbothered. Yeah,
unbothered.
Nothing bothers me. But that's not really the way. That's not really the way. It's vulnerable, being loving, because if you're love, you're just love. right? And you feel it and you give it.
Yeah.
And if like
love doesn't mean to not be bothered.
No,
First and foremost, that's bypassing.
Yes,
Just have
that's
to say
bypassing. So that's when love has to be shown.
Yeah.
You know, that's when we have to show the love that we are,
Yeah.
you know, in that space or in whatever experiences in life that we go through, you know, especially with rejection.
Yes.
You know, because people that see love and that are loved don't reject anyone.
Yes.
You know, and they don't make you feel less than.
Yes.
You know, they see you for who you are. Because if you're showing up as love and giving your all,
yeah,
who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
Right? So, and if they reject you, it's because they're rejecting themselves because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
It's something new to them.
Yeah.
Because they never felt what you were giving. Mm-hmm. So they get scared and they run.
Yep.
And it's okay.
It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what vulnerability calls for. It's the risk, right?
Yeah,
it's the risk of being open, the risk of love, the risk of walking life with an open heart in a world that constantly projects on us to walk with a closed, guarded state, right? Yeah. Where everything and everyone is a threat, where fear runs rampant for everything and we should be afraid of everything. Mm-hmm. And it's not the truth. That is one reality, right, of many other possibilities, right? And vulnerability is when we come and tap into our own wisdom. Mm-hmm. When we are connected to our own wisdom, you begin to walk through life with what I call greater eyes of truth, right? You are less tolerant of BS, honestly.
Oh my God, you can smell it.
You can smell it a mile away. Yes. And BS, I would say, is like, that's fear, that's inauthenticity, right? And to choose wholeness, to choose what's real, to speak loving truth into spaces, right? That need, right? The presence of a differing, awakened state, right? That's missing. And it's coming from a huge level of heart.
Yeah. So I do research when we have topics because I love to hear different point of views of, mm-hmm. Different teachers, because mm-hmm. I call them my teachers. And what I found is it says, what is emotional vulnerability? And it said, is the ability or willingness to acknowledge, express one's emotions one's emotions that is difficult or painful, such as shame, sadness, anxiety, insecurity, and mm-hmm. so much more. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's really showing up and really acknowledge all of it.
Yeah,
all of it. Yeah.
People think like being anxious and having anxiety, like the answer to that is to like repress that or try to act differently. Mm-hmm. And actually the response to anxiety is to actually speak the truth. It's to say, I'm feeling this way right now. This is making me feel this way. It's getting really curious about what is the core to the anxiety, right? And how can I meet myself and say what I need in order to give myself the stability that I need, right? Yeah. So it's like, and vulnerability is like, it is a resource and a tool, right? If you're a person who walks around in life with a lot of anxiety, if you have like PTSD, CPTSD, like I understand that, having done a lot of work around that myself, it's like vulnerability is like one of the greatest tools in your toolbox towards like having and creating a better state of mental health and well-being for yourself. It is a wonderful answer, right, mm-hmm. towards solutions around what anxiety is coming up in the world and for yourself. And when we're facing the anxieties that come in the world, because like you were talking to me, like watching the news and stuff, and it's like it feels overwhelming. And if you are an empath, a highly sensitive person especially, it's so hard to engage in those spaces because it feels so overwhelming. Vulnerability
Yes.
offers a huge opportunity for us to be honest about the anxieties, to not have to be an expert or guru or well read or, understand the research behind or well studied, right? And to be able to just say, like, here's how I'm feeling about this. Here's what I'm carrying, and so here's what's weighing heavy on me. Can I share this truth right now? Can I bring voice to this right now without the need to be perfect, but in order for me to honor where I'm at in myself, right? To begin the process of, like, what it is to create true, genuine belonging with other people, to include others in the conversation of, like, yeah, things don't feel good, right?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, if you are a human, living and breathing,
Yeah.
just to be alive, just to go one day after another, takes an immense level of courage just to be alive.
And being vulnerable is also, attractive. It's sexy.
I think it is.
For
those of us who feel.
Yeah, it's beautiful because it's an attractive trait because it means that you're gonna get to that more closeness, connection, and that more intimate space with that person. So ultimately is what we want. Is we want to create that loving, safe, and honest space with others, because we're being that. So we will like that, right? So it is to me it's sexy when somebody is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I don't call it weakness. I don't call it like you're like, especially on guys. To me, that's not weakness. That's really being a strong, loving man. And it's beautiful. It's just beautiful to see that on someone when they're being vulnerable.
Yeah. It's a process that takes us to our strength. And sometimes growing in vulnerability, like at first we might look disempowered, or it might feel like you're feeling more disempowered.
Yeah.
But trust the process, because the more vulnerable and open we get, which is really about the process of being a whole human, right? The more it's like really allowing yourself the permission to be yourself, right? This is when we come into alignment with our true self. When you're walking in the world as your true self, you feel powerful, and you uncover your purpose, you uncover greater connection, and you create spaces that are empowered and empowering for other people.
Yeah.
You just have to trust the process of vulnerability, because it might look messy in the beginning.
Yeah.
And vulnerability is about embracing the freaking mess, because it's messy. It's a messy process. And the reason why it's messy is because we didn't learn how to be this way. We learned the exact opposite, you know? And so we're learning how to create a new way of being in the world, because what we want is to create a new world. That's all anybody is talking about anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Vulnerability is the path of freedom.
Yeah. So Brené Brown says, what does, because really being vulnerable is the courage, right? Is being courageous. So she says, what's courage? And the word cur in that Latin means heart. So courage is to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. Yeah, and it's true, because when you're being vulnerable, you're just opening your heart and just saying it with whatever is felt at the moment.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the courage to be imperfect, and the courage to just be and say, and just opening up and say what you feel, what you're going through, what needs to be said, what needs to be addressed, to that person.
Speak your truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, connection.
Breathing in vulnerability, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's vulnerable just to be here talking to you all about
I was gonna
vulnerability.
Say that at the beginning, because it's really what it is.
And it's not about getting it right. It's just about sharing where we are in our own path with vulnerability. So, Gabriella, you say my work today, I am enough for what I need. The more I love me as me, the more I am empowered to be the me I am to be. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's about authenticity.
Yes.
It's about being true to you. And I cannot reinforce enough how being true to yourself and how walking, as your true self, right, is really about being love and loving. It's not about judgment.
No.
It's not about making someone wrong or seeing them as insignificant or insufficient, right? It's about seeing people, every person, as a whole human being, and where they are in their own process of where they are is where they are.
Yeah.
We don't take it personally.
No.
We let people be where they are, and we can love. And to love doesn't mean I'm still tethered and in this, right? Like, it just means I hold love. I don't feel separation. I don't feel judgment. I don't feel I'm being very neutral in this presence. But what I'm going to first and foremost do is ensure that I belong to myself, that I have myself, that I'm doing what I need to make sure that my heart is open and that I'm staying in my loving space within myself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let go of the person they told you to be.
Oof.
Let go of the idea that you had to mold your person or yourself into this person that is not you. Let go of that and become who you are right now. Be who you are right now.
Be too much.
Be
Be too loving. Be too compassionate. Be a truth teller. Be whatever who you are. Just be that.
Because the more you are you, the better connections we have.
The truer connections. My God.
Don't
you want to meet your people? That's how you meet your people.
Because we are human. And as humans, we need connections.
Yes.
But we want the loving, kind, vulnerable, the empathetic, the real, the compassionate, that heart connection. That's what we want.
Yes.
And it's possible.
Yes.
It's possible.
Yeah.
But it starts with us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a journey.
It is. A beautiful journey.
Beautiful journey.
Yes.
One step at a time. And so one of the things I would challenge you with as we're closing here is, to take a few minutes, right, and journal or just get quiet within yourself and, ask yourself, in what way are you running, hiding, armoring up from your truth? And what is one action that you can take towards stepping into your truth, right?
Yeah.
Is it something you need to say to someone?
Yeah, maybe it's just that.
Is it something you need to honor for yourself? Do you need to sign up for something? Do you have a dream or something? And is there, do you need to start? Do you need to put pen to paper? Whatever it is.
Maybe, it means maybe to reach out to someone you haven't talked to for a long time, or, just say what you haven't said for a long time, whatever you're bottling up and holding, in. Maybe it starts with that, or maybe it starts with being vulnerable with your kids, because sometimes we're not vulnerable with our kids.
Oh my gosh!
Apologize to your son, your kid, your daughter.
Teach your children to be what it is to be accountable and loving.
So it's to be, talk to your kids, not because you are the mom, the dad. You have the right to make him feel, because I'm your mom and dad, you're supposed to do
I'm
that.
right.
Because I'm your mom and dad, I'm right. Because
Right.
I'm never wrong. And why you do it, just do it because I'm telling you to do it. No, it comes to be vulnerable with your kid and say, okay, I know you don't understand it right now, but let me tell you
So good.
why. And I always talk about my
Be
granddaughters.
human.
Always, it is putting yourself at their level, because they don't understand your mind. They don't understand the way you speak. They don't understand the way you talk or the way you're communicating the things to them at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Be loving. Remember when you were a kid and how you would have loved for your parents to be that loving and
To
understanding,
hear and see
to
you.
hear you, see you, and understand. So
Love you unconditionally. That unconditional love, man.
So I'm
That's
going to
where they
share one thing that happened to my granddaughter, which is the oldest, because she is my teacher. She shows me a lot of patience.
It's such a teacher.
So I bought her, I don't know if you guys seen those
Sassy.
marshmallows covered with chocolate, and it has two eyes and it has a nose. So when I opened it, I happened to crack the side of the whole face of the clown. She grabbed it and I gave it to her, and she's like, the bigger face. And I'm like, what's going on? You cracked the side of the clown. I don't want it anymore. And I said, why don't you want it? Because I wanted it to be whole. And I said, okay, let me explain what happened to you. So I had to be vulnerable enough to, to come to a space where she will understand why that happened.
Yeah.
Because I just opened it.
Until it just
I just opened it and it came off, right? So I said, okay, mi amor, I know you don't understand right now, but I'm gonna tell you why it was cracked. I said, what they do is they put it in a big box and they put different ones, one after another, one after another one, after another one, after another. So they have to tape the box. So when they tape the box, they probably squished it a little bit where the side cracked. But as you can see, you still have the two eyes and the nose. So you still have your clown and it's looking at you. See? Do you like it? And then she's like, oh, Witty, yeah, you're right. But why do they do that? And I said, because they have to package a lot of them. So sometimes it happens, we make mistakes and it's okay. Sometimes it happens. She's like, yeah, sometimes it happens. You're right. And she starts eating it. And I'm like, oh, thank God she understood.
Right. To create
but it's
understanding.
Yes, it's creating that
versus
space.
bulldozing. Yeah.
And instead of saying, just eat it
Just
and don't
it.
bother me.
Right.
No, it's creating that space because you know that because that little thing that she came for me, and she asked me, probably not in the way that I would have loved her, to ask me, but she's a kid,
yes.
So she
So
knows that
honest.
she can come up to me. Oh, she's a very honest person.
It's honesty, like
and
please
she's blunt.
Don't turn that off.
Yeah, I don't turn it off. I just let her be.
Let them be honest.
So she knows that because she was able to come to me with that, she's going to be able to come to me in other areas of her life as she grows up.
Right.
I'm creating that safe space for her
to be human,
to be her, and to be heard, and to be seen, and to know that I love her regardless. Regardless. Because I want to be there for her when she needs an advice, when she needs guidance, when she's, growing up, when she becomes a teenager, right?
Yeah.
So do that for your kids too. Be vulnerable enough for them. They need you at this moment. They need you because you don't know what they go through in school. You don't know what they go through with peers. You just don't know.
Yes.
And I know you're going through your own things, but they need you.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is like the reason why this work is the most important work you can do is because we've experienced this and it's a reality of like where there is a threat here, there's a threat that exists out here, right? And so we can personalize the things that are happening. They're just kids, right? Like we personalize it, we get all up in our feelings about it, and it's because we didn't grow up with an unconditional love.
No.
We didn't
No.
grow up with parents that held us and allowed us to belong and allowed us to get it wrong and to mess up, and who still gave us the space and freedom to be loved. Like, you may not have experienced that yourself. That is a reality for most humans walking this planet.
Yeah.
And the way we shift that is by starting to do that work for ourselves.
Yes.
And digging deep and doing that work with our children,
Yes.
or the young people around us, or walking with that kind of presence in the world with one another.
Yes. Be the love you wanted in your life.
Yes.
Be it. Be it.
Be it.
Be it.
Be it.
We love you, Heather.
We love you. Mwah. Thanks for joining us
Thank
tonight.
you, everyone.
And diving into vulnerability.
Besitos.
Allow yourself to walk more with your heart
Yes.
open. You know, explore, this question of like, in what ways am I denying myself my truth? And what is one step you can take towards that?
Yeah. How can you practice
How can
it?
you start walking in your truth today
Mhm.
with an open heart?
Yes.
How can you
Yes.
how can you risk for love? It feels like a risk because we're not used to doing it, but it's messy. You just got to get comfortable with the messiness of the journey.
And it doesn't mean
It's
it's
okay.
not gonna happen again. It's gonna, but you're ready. You're ready for the outcome.
Growing in your wisdom.
Yes.
Vulnerability helps you grow into your wisdom. So
Yes.
Blessings to you.
Yes.
We love you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for your comments. And
share
thank you
this
for your
message with
support.
someone who needs to hear it.
Yes.
Follow us, like, subscribe on YouTube. Yeah. And, we just keep coming at you with these messages from heart. And we love
Always
sharing it with you.
in our experiences.
Yeah. All right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.